Welcome back to Burn to Notice, the series dedicated to the actions of Michael Weston and his crew. If you are new to the series, there is a link in the description down below to catch you up. This episode begins with Mike and Sam discussing if Mike should break into the building where Carla's sniper is interested in, and they even bring up why this is a bad idea. However, ultimately, Mike decides on breaking into this place basically to see what is going on. And surprisingly, not a lot. Just an empty floor with a couple of offices and a conference room where a table has been moved 90 degrees from where it normally sits due to the marks on the floor. This is puzzling to Sam due to the fact that there are not that many targets, and almost on cue, a ferry boat shows up and solidifies that the target must be on that. However, also on cue, Carla shows up to throw a wrench into this plan, and almost impossibly, Mike gets away, but also Sam plants a tracker on Carla.
Always be prepared, Navy SEAL motto.
That's Boy Scouts.
And that leads them to the hotel Carla is at, where Sam will be most of this episode. Unfortunately, the ferry is almost a dead end because the ferry doesn't allow pre-purchased tickets. With that being said, Mike leaves in order to hide the key card, meaning this entire time, since the second episode of this season, he presumably have been leaving it in a sock drawer. Seriously? I think this is just a way to explain what a slick is for later in the episode. But yeah, the best super spy ever, ladies and gentlemen. And as Mike is finishing up, Fee and Campbell show up to offer Mike a job from a patient of Campbell's. And this guy got beaten up to the point of spitting up blood. But at least in this scene, Fee tries to explain away the last episode where Campbell almost got fired for using the ambulance for personal reasons. And especially with this new stuff with Carla, Mike doesn't really want to get into a new job until Fee stubbornly tries to do it solo, which forces Mike to swoop in an attempt to garner favor with Fee, and agrees to meet with the guy. This is where we meet Henry at a bar, who explains that he does security and a man named Lesher is working his way to get the personnel files for the security business by attacking him. Also, a friend of his who was not suicidal decided to unalive himself, and Lesher called to confirm that it was him by saying that more people will die if he doesn't play ball. But this is a great way to frame your villain as somebody who will stop at nothing. So Lesher is planning a kidnapping of the daughter of this very rich family, probably for money or something. And Mike asks Henry for all of the security files that Lesher was looking for, which is interesting because what if Mike was working with Lesher and this was the best way to get the personnel files? I mean, honestly, Henry only knows Campbell, and Campbell is just some random EMT. And just like that, Mike gets the files that Lesher is looking for so that Mike can create a personnel file in order to inject himself into the company. This also gets Fee to volunteer for this, which is very uncharacteristic for her. She hates paperwork. And this creates the chasm between Fee and Mike this episode. Fee is trying to help Campbell, whereas Mike is trying to gain brownie points from Fee. And with the paperwork settled, Mike decides to leave to visit Maddie, where Nate is, and they explain that Nate is starting a limo service, and Maddie took a loan out on the house, which is very concerning for Michael because she could lose it if something bad happens, and knowing Nate, something bad's gonna happen. However, Maddie earnestly defends Nate's decision, but honestly, I feel like this scene is only here to set up a scene at the end of the episode. Then Mike meets with Henry again to explain what Henry needs to do, and he is a bit suspicious. Then Mike reassures him.
I've kind of done this thing before, Henry.
Then Fee and Mike oversee Henry's meeting with Lesher and his muscle. Seriously? This is the muscle? It looks like a stiff breeze could take him out. Mike could snap him like a Slim Jim. However, the meeting goes about as well as it could because Lesher chooses Mike as the security detail. However, Mike does meet with Lesher at a bar where Mike pretends to be drunk in order to sell his cover ID. Also, he has a very funny line.
You want to hear a funny story about my divorce?
Sure.
Me too.
Lesher then furthers the interview, and Mike fends him off from getting a job with Lesher, basically in order to sell that Mike actually works for the security company. Next, Mike meets with Sam to debrief about Carla's surveillance and a way in for Mike. And Sam's plan is literally using the world's worst photocopy in order to trick a facial recognition software. Good thing this thing aired in 2008, because now there's a better encryption process on an iPhone. But the facial recognition is fooled, and Mike goes in, and we learn why Mike explained Slicks earlier, because he looks for intel and finds it in the bathroom fan, where we see a few familiar faces, such as Jimmy, Nefzi, the sniper, and even Victor. Also, we get a face that we've never seen before, which could be the target for the sniper, and I'll get into that at the end of the episode with my own fan theory. At the loft, Mike and Sam debrief the intel they got. However, the target isn't in the files, which means that either the target hasn't been set or Carla just doesn't know the target yet. This is where Mike meets up with Henry again, and Henry explains what the job entails and even gives Mike a company car. Afterwards, Mike meets with Lesher again to discuss Lesher's employment package, where Lesher bribes Mike with $1,000 just to hear him out. However, this also creates a problem because Mike agrees to allow Lesher to watch the security detail to get a better understanding of how well he works. But also Mike decides to throw a little bit of discouragement Lesher's way by saying that there's way more security than previously known. And due to Mike's cover ID, he pretends to be drunk enough to where he can't drive in order to get Lesher to drive him home, where Mike plants a listening device. At the loft, Mike discusses the job with Fee and proposes Nate to help with the job, but Fee also offers Mike tuna, and Mike promptly turns it down after learning it was from Campbell. So he leaves to go get more yogurt, and as he leaves, Carla calls and scolds him because he used the key card at the beginning of the episode, which is very interesting that this shadow government has millions and millions of dollars, but they couldn't have given that office of security a picture of Michael. I mean, she has one, it's right there. So this whole ordeal could have been avoided, and Mike is able to brush her off. The next day, Mike then meets with Sam in order to get some extra security on this job, but also he recruits Nate as well, and Nate is excited about the job.
I'm gonna frame this. Well, maybe I'm gonna break this up into smaller bills and frame one of them.
After that, Mike picks up the girl, and I honestly believe this is the first time that they bring up the running joke that Mike can't speak Spanish, which is a character trait that is overarching throughout the series, well, most of the series. When Mike arrives, Nate and Sam give Lesher a good show of force. Unfortunately, the kidnapping is more than just a bid for money, it's for power, meaning Mike needs to step up his game. Lesher meets with Mike and convinces him to help kidnap the girl, and Mike reluctantly agrees to help. Back at the loft, Campbell is helping Mike's injuries and explaining to Henry how Mike plans to blow the job. Then Mike meets back up with Lesher to show how the job is going to go down. This is where Mike plants seeds of distrust to sell his cover. Then Sam calls to inform Mike that the shooter is back in town, meaning that the hit is happening soon. Then at the loft, Mike convinces Lesher he is going to blow the job and that he is not afraid of death. But during this exchange, Fee gets misty-eyed over what Mike says because of the parallels of what he's saying to their relationship, which is good, and I wish I could show this scene in its entirety because the facial expressions of Fee really sell their relationship. Anyway, Mike then meets back up with Lesher, who is furious about Mike's change of heart, and Mike gives Lesher a list of their crimes, which pisses Lesher off even more. And this is where Lesher calls off the job. As Mike leaves the meeting, Mike gets jumped by one of Lesher's guys. However, Mike is able to fend off the lowly hitman. Also, he didn't use the muscle, which is sad because it would have been a little bit more poetic, especially after they zoomed into him and said that he's the muscle. And during this time, Henry calls to inform him that the job is still on and that the new security guard is going to meet in early retirement. Then Mike meets with Henry in order to explain how he is going to save the day. Then Lesher and his muscle are at the country club, locked and loaded, when
You thought you could kill me? I gave you a chance to be redeemed! But you turned your back! These are your sins, Lesher, here on this paper. You hear them coming? They will find everything you brought to kidnap that poor girl. And you will be judged!
which I mean, hands down, is the best way Mike has ever taken down one of the villains. The speech he gives to Lesher about his newfound faith is just amazing. However, now that the deal is completely blown, Henry Campbell, Fee, and Mike debrief about the job, and as Fee and Mike leave, she keeps badgering him about his opinion on Campbell, which is short-lived because Maddie calls, and we get the real reason why Nate was in this episode, to get him thrown in jail to motivate Mike to stay out of Carla's business. Mike calls Sam, and turns out Carla is on the move, which cannot be good. They intercept her at a pier with that extra guy from her files. Then Mike decides to leave and go for the sniper, and they split up with a very impressive chase scene with Fee running interference while Mike is on a bike. Unfortunately, I can't show the whole scene, but the one scene of note is when the bike is slid under an 18-wheeler, complete with a Michael Weston smirk. He speeds off and makes it back to the loft and calls Sam, and the sniper got exploded, meaning Mike is completely safe, and I won't have to end my sentence abruptly. Oh, that's crazy. This scene is still shocking. I think this is the first time Mike has actually gotten somebody to get the drop on him, and in a very catastrophic way, which is basically unheard of. This episode is chocked with new information on Carla and her operations. But that cliffhanger, back when cliffhangers actually mattered, this episode aired in September, and the next episode premiered in January. I feel that we take for granted the fact that we watch a series from beginning to end without stopping, and honestly, it messes with the suspense. I can't imagine waiting 4 months for this to come out and find out what actually happened to Mike. This is back when mid-season finales really earned their salt and left you with enough intrigue to come back for the second half of the season, which this season, the momentum this episode starts carries it all the way to the end, making it one of the best seasons in this show. But now with the sniper target being compromised because of the fact that now we have no shooter to get rid of the target. Now initially I thought that it would be that extra guy in the files, but that was turned away when you see him at the end of the episode. And there are some theories that the person that they were going after was Jesse. And spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't watched the full series, Jesse is a counterintelligence officer who joins the team later, but I step back from that. I think that the person is actually Anson. Now we know that Anson is only known by management because he doesn't even make the knock list. Again, later on in the series, the list of everybody who was part of this big conglomerate, the only people who knew he even existed was management.
It was just me and management. Two guys with a dream.
And if Anson got a little too powerful and began starting a new organization, he would be unstoppable, which is why I think that they were going to take him out prematurely. Which does suck, because if the mission went out without a hitch, season 5 would have looked completely different. This was an amazing way to end the first half of this season. And as I said before, the momentum carries it to the end. Thank you for watching. If you are curious on how FBI catches serial killers using psychology, check out my other series, Inside Criminal Minds. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.